Hi everyone, this is Ashish, and today we are going to start our next session in Azure Bicep training session. So today we are going to talk about Bicep modules, and Bicep modules are the way to create your reusable infrastructure as code. So when you create infrastructure as code and when you start utilizing resources, you come up with a pattern where you will have a couple of resources that you might be using in a similar way, and in that case you just like any other programming system, you come across code which is duplicated as different people are creating the same set of logic or the same set of resources in the infrastructure as well. To help you reuse the code that has already been developed to deploy the similar kind of resources, we use Bicep module. So let's get started with this. Now, in myself, Ashish Raj, I am co-founder of Azure Easy Community, and I work as a cloud and DevOps architect, and I am a Microsoft certified trainer. You can find more about me on my website, azure-devopspro.com. Okay, so let's go to the training course outline like we do for all the sessions, just to recap what we have done so far and what we are going to discuss in this next session. So we started with infrastructure as code. Again, then we discussed about Azure Bicep, how it fits into this ecosystem of infrastructure as code, what is different, what are the different alternatives that you have. Then we discussed about tools and setup, like what are the tools that you need, what kind of extensions in Visual Studio Code that can help you write better Bicep, or can help you start writing it as soon as possible without going much into the different web pages of APIs and all. So we have discussed about that, and then we discussed about the basic file structure, how it looks like when you look at a Bicep file, how to get to know that what's happening here and what are the things getting deployed, and the basics syntax. We discussed about data types available in Bicep, and then we looked into parameters, variable, and output, how to use parameters, how to use variables, how to use outputs, what is the difference between parameter and variables, and when to use what. Those are the things we discussed. The next session, or the very last session, was about loops and condition, and now we are talking about Bicep module. So we have changed a little bit. So if you have watched the first session when I shared this course outline for the first time, I had something else as day 8, but as we progress I kind of modified this course outline to to make it more meaningful in a way that the learning flow, or the kind of examples or the approach that we are following, it should make sense in that flow. So that's how we have changed it to Bicep module now. Otherwise it was day 9 topic, but we are bringing it to day 8 because we have something that we must cover in the module. Then we go to the day 9 thing, and then we will see what are the things there. Okay, so let's talk about module, and when we talk about module, we will be talking about some of these things. Module block, what exactly it looks like, what is target scope, what is parameters of a module. So we have already discussed about parameters in Bicep file, the parameters in module, how it looks like and how you use it, and then the scope thing. We will talk about all these 4 things primarily. These are the most basic things that you must know when you start writing your Bicep module. And of course there are so many other things like hosting a private module, module in a private repository, how to host it, how to consume it, how to use it. We will be talking about those things in upcoming sessions. These are the 4 things that you must know when we talk about Bicep. Now we will go back to the Visual Studio, and we have this day 8, and now I will create a Bicep file here, and I will call it main.bicep. Now what I will do is I will take one of the very basic Bicep file from day 1 and paste it over here, just to give you the overview. Like, this is how a Bicep file looks like, and we have already discussed about these decorators of parameter, what exactly the parameter, what are these allowed decorator, this parameter. Then we have a variable, then we are deploying a resource named my storage, which is using a Microsoft.storage / storage account API of this version, and then we are defining the resource. So this is pretty much a basic Bicep file. Now when do you need modules? So suppose you have an organization where when someone deploys a storage account, they are supposed to deploy a storage account using a particular configuration. Now a storage account is a very, very simple resource, but I'm just taking example so that we can demonstrate in this very, very brief period, brief time. Otherwise, think of any complex infrastructure like maybe Azure Kubernetes services, a virtual machine infrastructure which has load balancer, app gateway, public IP, or maybe private IP. The virtual network, subnet. So many complex resources that you usually create, and in most of the organization, you tend to start using a set of configuration, or a set of configuration which is recommended to be used by the team. So for example, again coming back to the storage account example, you might not want to use all the different types of storage kind that you have. So your organization might just give you just one storage kind that you should be using. Or maybe similarly you have like standard LRS, standard GRS. In your organization or in your product team or in your infrastructure team, whatever the team is deploying the infrastructure, they might again say that we only want always have a storage account with a standard LRS. So again, we can define it as a variable here, but we want to define this entire storage account configuration as a reusable module. That's what we call module. And anyone who wants to deploy a storage account should be able to deploy storage account without thinking about what the underlying configurations are. So again, let me first take this out, Control C, and I will just create a folder here, and I will say modules. So we'll be keeping all the module here, and module file is nothing but a simple Bicep file. You can name it as you may want. So suppose I'm creating a module for a storage account, so I will say storage account .bicep. You can name it whatever you want. It's just that the extension of the file has to be Bicep file, because we are creating a Bicep module. So, and then once we create this module, it is nothing but actually a simple Bicep file. So I could have just copied it from here itself. So I have not copied all the parameters, just to make sure we will be having minimal things over here. So when we create a module, we just create a resource, resource in that file, and it is typically again a very simple bicep module, bicep file, which has resource again similar to my storage, and then again the API. And but here what I'm saying is the name of the storage account. So the name of the storage account, I want the ability to the someone to select the name. So in that case, I want to have the parameter for that, and of course storage name. So storage name is the parameter, or maybe I will decorate it like description, name of the storage account. And then so we have a parameter which is storage account. Now in the SKU, I don't want the user to select the SKU, and for SKU what I want is, and instead of that what I will do is even better. I mean, you can define a variable and you can use that variable over here, or you can define this directly here. So using variable here is the benefit that in future if someone wants to change that particular constant thing that is defined in your module, they can just simply come to the top part and just change it, and wherever it is being referenced it will be changed automatically. Otherwise, if I will define it like this here, suppose this, then what will happen is that suppose this configuration is a kind of a configuration which will be like used in other part of this bicep file as well. I mean, this configuration is very specific to the storage account, but think of it something like virtual network address space or subnet address space or some other configuration that is reusable in other areas of the bicep file. I mean, just give an example. So it makes sense to have this defined as a variable and use that variable instead of using the constant. And then the storage kind as well, I don't want to use I don't want to give someone to ability to create all different kind of storage account for organizational reasons maybe, or maybe I just want to make sure that it is maintainable. So suppose I have to write some script or some kind of automation which only works with the storage account v2, or maybe it only works with blob storage, or I mean, it can have any reason, because or any condition that you might use, that you might have in your organization, and then you want to restrict the storage account creation process to that particular configuration. So in that case, I will create a kind of a module. So this is a module. This is nothing but a normal bicep file. And the way to when we use this as a module, how do we use it is that if I go to the main bicep, and I will remove everything else here. Now, in a normal bicep file, you use the resource block, but here what a module block is looks like, it starts with module. So we are saying I want to use a module, and just like resources, you have a symbolic name. Like if I go here, so this is a symbolic name. So similar to this, in module also you give a symbolic name, which is in this particular file, and I will say my ADP storage account. So ADP is a project which wants to deploy a storage account. Now in case of resources, you will mention the API of official Azure RM API of storage account. But here I'm getting option to tell the path of the module. So in my case, my module lives in the module folder, storage account bicep. So what it is saying is that in this particular folder, in this particular file, my module is being defined, Now I will just define it like this. Oops. And just like that, I am saying, that let's remove this parameter. What would be the name of the module? So this will be while deployment will happen, this is the name that will be shown for the deployment. So I can name it whatever I want. So I can say, storage account, or I can say ADB storage account, something like that. So this is just a kind of a name that will be shown as a deployment when we deploy this module, and we will see that how does it look like. Now in the parameter, and this parameter does have this, let me show you. So in the parameter, you get the parameter values that is defined in this parameter file. So if I go to this, you have like one parameter only actually. So another one is variable. So variable is like within the Bicep file, you can't provide it as an input, and we have discussed about it in the previous session. What is the difference between parameter and variable, and when to use what. Yeah, if you have not watched that session, please go ahead and watch that session. I will provide the link to that session in the description. Okay, so you have this parameter, which is a storage account name, and the same parameter will be expected by the module deployment. So this module needs a parameter called storage name, and for a storage name I can provide any storage name here, or of course I can provide it here just like any parameter or any value declaration, or even for this, just like because this is just a Bicep file, so I can say storage account name. I can define a parameter for here itself, and then I can provide that value here. Yep. So what is the the benefit of it is that I can define as many modules I want. So I can define another module. I will say my ADP storage account 2, just 2, and I will say 2, and here I will say, maybe I will define another parameter here. And I'll say actually 2, and here also I will define it like this. Makes sense. One, and here I'll give that name, and here I will give that second name. So this is just a kind of a demonstration that I can reuse this code in multiple ways. Now think of it. Right now we have a very simple example of a storage account, which is a very simplistic resource. But think of an infrastructure where you have a application, web application, or any kind of API management, or AI services. Whenever you deploy these services or any of the infrastructure on a production scale, you need a set of resources in a particular way connected to each other, and so it will not be as simple as you can see the storage account. So possibly you will have so for example, if you are creating a web application infrastructure, so you might create a virtual machine. Control. So you might create a virtual machine, you might create a VNet, and Control Z. You might create a storage, you might create a app gateway. So you might need all these different kind of resources to be able to create that set of infrastructure for hosting, or for that use case. Now, in case you are not using module, you might be defining all of it in this main file, just like we did on day 3 here. So you have all the resources in this, and then you start adding more resources here, and now tomorrow again another team comes and they say that, you know what, I just need a different storage account name, but I want all these configuration to be used. Now what we will do, when you I mean, it does not happen initially, but what teams start having the pattern that they have a lot of code duplication, where they will create a storage account in a particular way, just that the storage account name will differ, or a particular configuration will differ, maybe a kind will differ or something like that. Similarly, when they create a set of infrastructure for a web application, so suppose app gateway, they create a virtual network, they create a load balancer, they create a front door, I mean XYZ, whatever resources that you need. When they create all these resources, what they do is they define all of it in a single file, and another web application infrastructure request comes in, and in that situation they again just dump it again in a single file, and then again they just navigate around or changing some configuration values. And in that case, this reusability factor is actually very, very important there, because slowly you start growing your infrastructure as code, and then slowly the complex logic start duplicating in your repository, and then it is very difficult to maintain that infrastructure as code, because you don't really have a pattern. Again, this pattern comes over a period of time, so it's not like you will come up with a pattern on day 1 itself. So initially, when you start deploying infrastructure as code, you should not worry about this pattern from day 1, but you should always have this back in your mind that this will happen. So you have to be very proactive when you are starting to create more infrastructure. You should start seeing the pattern, you should start seeing what are the opportunities where one of the storage account bicep, which is a main file, can be converted into a module, just like we did here, and then actually anyone can use this module. And again, right now this module is defined in this file, in this local file, but this module can be just published on a private repository, Azure Container Registry, just like any other repository. Like if you are familiar with Docker image, just like you reference a Docker image from a registry and then you use it, similar to that, you can actually define the bicep and you can use it as you may want. Now let's go ahead and see what's happening here. So yeah, these things are okay. So this is how you define your module, and this is how you can actually create as many storage accounts you may want. Now here we will again use a function, and function is adp mod, or maybe adp just like that, adp1, and I would say so we are using the or so what we are saying is that we want to create a unique string for which will be unique across subscription, and we'll add this string in front of it so that we know what we are creating. Similarly here I can do the same thing. Actually I will just copy paste this. and ADP1 is this, and I will say ADP2. So this is how I can generate unique string, and unique string returns 13 characters, and then you add these 4 character in front of it. So we are still quite good in terms of storage account limit. So storage account name has to have a length limitation is there. I think it is 23 character. Here it is not showing, but yes, it has to be 23 character, globally unique. So we will be able to get a globally unique string here. So what we are doing is we are creating a storage account with these 2 different names and using the module. Now modules are just not only the parameter. So here we have this module, and it has like one parameter, then variable, and then we have like kind. Again, it makes sense to define the storage kind, and here remove this as well just to make it a little bit better. Now tomorrow if someone says that, oh, we want to change the module, a storage account module, to have a storage account storage kind v2 to something else, you can just go ahead and change it instead of going through all the code. Now usually you will not have this simple module. You will have couple of resources connected to each other in a particular way with a proper naming convention and all. So you can understand how it will be beneficial to just define once and then reuse it again and again for different deployment. Now in module you can also have output, just like any it doesn't make sense to have this key, but storage account name, just you have this name already, but I'm just showing up, or maybe something more meaningful, maybe properties, creation time, maybe just kind of what are the possibilities. So we are again showing a kind of demonstrating the use of different component of a bicep file. Here in bicep file you can have output. Similarly, once you get the output from a module, you can use it in your main file, main bicep file. So here I will say output, and I'll say storage account name 1 is equals to storage account this, and or maybe we can name it like 1, and here also 1, just to make sure we have this common naming convention. And then I can show this here, and this will be storage account name 2, and this will be 2. So it will output these values, and so after deployment, you can, if you want to know what are the names of the storage account that has been deployed, you can easily get the storage. Actually, it makes sense to have the storage account name itself. Yeah, I named it something else, but I was getting something else. So yeah, so now we will get the output of the storage account name when we deploy this main.bicep, which is using the module file from this folder. Now let's go ahead and see what's happening. So I will just, okay, yeah, we have to still do some more work. Okay, so this can deploy a module, but this is still deploy. I have to first create a resource group, just like we did so far. So you first create a resource group, and then you deploy this storage account to that resource group using az deploy group command. So you have like, let me show you that. So az deploy, yeah. So I'm just opening the okay. So far when you create a deployment of this bicep file, you must have a group that you want to deploy to these resources. Now, and this is how so far we have been deploying. When you use this command, you have to have a resource group before that, and you have to create that resource group. Now we are going little bit further. Now we also want to create the resource group as well as part of the bicep deployment, and for that you don't use this group command, you use sub, easy deployment sub. So resource group you can create on the subscription level, and for that what you have to do is, let's come to this point. What you have to do is define these like this. So we have these two. So to define what level this particular file will be deployed, we have something called target scope, and target scope can be, let me show you. Yeah, it can be, oh no, why it is not showing. No, it can be, I don't know why it is not showing, but it can be subscription, it can be management group, it can be tenant, or it can be resource group. So when you define a target scope, you say that this particular file will be deployed on a subscription level. However, these resources, you can see that it is throwing us error as soon as we define the target scope to subscription. But if I do this, it is fine. So by default, target scope, even if I don't define this, it will not show any error, because target scope by default is set to resource group. So when you deploy resources, when you do not define target scope, you have to have a resource group where you want to deploy this bicep file. That's how it works. But when you want to deploy the resources including resource group using the bicep file, you have to define the target scope to subscription. Now, what are the other target groups, target scope, like management group, tenant, and other things? What others, like you have like management group, you have like tenant, and then you have subscription, and then you have resource group. So resource group you have already discussed, you need to have a resource group to use that, and you don't really have to define that. By default it is set to resource group. Another one is subscription, management group, and tenant. So tenant and management groups are again just like subscription. On the resource group level, you have to have a resource group. On subscription level, of course, you have already a subscription, but you have to define this target scope to subscription, and same goes for other tenant, management and tenant. For all these different target scope, you define different kind of resources. So when you deploy, yes, 1 minute. So when you define a kind of target scope, when you define a subscription, you deploy you can only deploy a certain kind of resources, and that's the reason as soon as I define this, I get error. And if I hover my mouse, it says that the module declaration is missing the following required properties, which is scope, because when you deploy these resources cannot be deployed on a subscription level. Because when you create a storage account, you create a storage account in a resource group, not in a subscription. Of course, it is in a subscription, but it has to have a resource group. However, when we define subscription, it doesn't know, which resource group you're talking about, because I have to have a resource group. And that is if you're getting the point, when we don't define this, it has to have a resource group, which we first create using AZCLI or PowerShell or whatever the approach we are using. If we have this like subscription, it asks us to tell what scope, which resource group you're talking about. And because of that reason, we will create a resource group here. So we will say resource storage RG, and I will say, oops, yep, so resource groups, API version, then I'll say this. So what I'm saying is that I need a resource group, and if you see, it's not giving us error because this resource type, which is resource group, can be defined on the subscription level. It doesn't need an additional resource group, which makes sense. So when you have a resource, we have defined the resource, we still have the errors, and we will come to that point in a bit. But we have defined a resource group. Again, we can have a resource group with the name which comes from, and actually let's instead of parameter, we will define them as a variable, because we don't really want our users to tell us what is the storage account name, because it's coming from a a calculation. So, but I want my user to tell me the resource group name. So for that, I will define a parameter, resource group name, and that would be the string. And this resource group name I'll be using here. Yep. So we are using a storage, resource group name parameter from here, and just to make it a little bit meaningful, yep. So we have the resource group name. Now we are telling these are the storage account that we want to deploy using a unique string. It will give us a unique string, add it to the ADP1, ADP2, and then we are saying we want to deploy it on the subscription level, and on the subscription level, first we are deploying a resource group. Okay, but this guy is still complaining about scope, and you can see that this is saying you don't have a scope. And for that, you come here and you define scope, and for that scope, what I am saying is the scope of this resource is storage RG. Storage RG is referencing this resource. So again, this is a kind of a function, resource function, which references this particular resource. There are different ways of using reference. So if you have the resource defined in the same bicep file, so for example, we have this storage RG defined in this same bicep file, we can directly reference them from here, just like we are doing. So we are referencing this. So this is the scope. But when you don't have this, you can also use reference thing. And in reference, what you need is you need a identifier, you need a API version. So you need like Microsoft resource group, and then you need a resource group name. Okay, so this reference cannot be used here because it is giving a div, but this way you can get the reference as well. But here we will use this. But just in case, there is one more way to to get the reference just in case if the source group is not defined here. So when things are not defined in this particular so for example, suppose we want to deploy this storage account in a resource group which is already existing. So for example, I'll say and not defined here. Okay, And again, I'm saying okay, so what I'm saying is that, one resource group that I want to create as part of this deployment, but there is another resource group which is already there, and there actually I want to deploy this storage account to. In that case, what I can do is, there is a approach where I say like this. This is the thing. Oops. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, there is an existing resource group which is called existing storage RG. That's the one that I want to use for storage account 2. So for storage account 1, the resource group was defined in this bicep file, but for storage account 2, resource group was not defined in this storage account, but we can still reference that by using existing. So we are referencing, we are saying that there is another resource group that I want to deploy this storage account to, and this storage account 1 will be deployed to the resource group that is not existing and has to be created as part of this deployment. Now for that, I will say scope, and I will say existing resource group. So you can see there are two resource groups we are using now. We can use the same resource group as well, there is no issues in that, but we are demonstrating that you can use, you can refer a different existing resource in your bicep file to get the different properties. And not only that, in case of resource group, we just want to reference that resource group here, but when you select this dot reference, you get all the different properties of that particular object as well, even though we have not defined it here. So we are just calling this existing for this existing storage RG, and we can access all the different properties of that resource group. Now resource group has, we rarely use any other properties other than location and the name of the resource group, but think of it as another resource like virtual network, or a NIC card, or application gateway, or any complex or very very configurable resource. You can refer that exist as a existing, and then you can use that resource properties into defining the different things or different configuration of resources that you are going to deploy. So for example, if you want to we will not do that, but let me just show you something here. So for example, if I go to the storage account, and if we go to the storage account, and if we properties, and in the properties we go to rule, I think, no, this, yeah, so oops. Yeah, if I go to the network ACLs, and if I do this, IP rules, oops, I think actually it is easy to refer the API. Visual Studio Code does not give us the intelligence many times that we need. So if I go here and not IP rule, actually I want something else. I want virtual network rule. So if I go here and if I say is it not showing? Virtual network rule is part of network ACLs. Okay, and I don't want this, which I yep, and that yep. So in virtual network you have these three things, and I'll just define oops. So yep, so ID, and ID is supposed to be the virtual the ID of a subnet, and you can see that you have to get the subnet ID, and for that suppose you don't have the virtual network defined here. So in that case what you can say is that you know what, you can give me the name of the virtual network, yeah, and if it exists in another resource group, then you also need resource group of name of that virtual network, because let me explain you that. So if I do this, yeah, so if you have a virtual network, if you already have a virtual network in the same resource group where a storage account is being deployed, then this will be fine. But if this is not in the same resource group, in that case you have to define the resource group scope of that, and here you have to provide the name of the resource group as well. So we will come to this kind of examples in a bit, but I just wanted to give you the point where I will just remove this property itself. Yeah, we just need a simple storage account. So yeah, so I just wanted to give you the practical use of the reference when you have an existing resource which is outside of your bicep file. It might have been defined using bicep file in another location. It might have been defined using ARM template. It might have been deployed using manual portal, or it might have been deployed using PowerShell, AZCLI, whatever it is. If it exists in Azure, then Azure ARM API can use existing option to get all the properties of that resource, just like we are having this resource group, and then you can use it in your existing bicep file. Okay, so now we have this everything here, and let's do a what if. So as you can see, this is the subscription that we are this resource, this particular file is targeting a subscription. First it is creating a storage account resource group and provided with the name of the resource group, and then it is again expecting a resource group which already exists, and then it does all the things. Now since we don't have a resource group yet, we do not have a resource group yet, so what we will do is we will first create a resource group. So az group create, and we'll say name adp rg or adp sa rg1, or say 2 actually, so because 1 will be created by bicep itself, and location would be east US, simplest one. So yep, and when we created this, let me go ahead and go to the so we have this, and if we go to this, it is still still refreshing. Yep, so we have this, and we don't have any thing here. Now we will go to our Visual Studio Code. So we already have a resource group. What we don't have resource group for this one, storage account 1, and that will be created by the bicep file. For that, what we will do is we will use az deploy sub create. So this is the command we are using, and let me show you that one. Yep. So you have this az deployment sub create. You can even use deploy only, so we will just use deploy create, and then this will need location, everything, but it does not looking for resource group as such because it is deploying on the subscription level. Now, but how do we provide that another resource group name which is supposed to be created? So we will provide this name with the parameter, and with the existing parameter we will provide the one that we just created outside of bicep. So we will say and actually yes, still cd chapter day 8 oops, where is this? Oh, okay, cd ic demos oops, day 8, and then we run this command az deploy, and actually we will not deploy az deploy sub what if. So there is a command which says, which will not deploy the resources, but it will show you what is going to happen if we use this bicep file. So let's see if it is, and there is a validate command as well to validate your bicep file. We'll use what if to validate as well. Okay, so what if, and we say that file, and just have a look. Yeah, let's do this. L East US, and name, I'll just say vs local, and oops, then we have to provide the, what is that, file template file parameter template file, or it can be f, and it would be main.bicep, and then you have like parameter, so parameter p, and we say that parameter. So what are the parameters we have to provide? We have to provide two parameters, others are variable. Resource group name, so we'll say, I'll just copy this guy, name is equals to, so resource group name, what we are doing is we already have rg2, so what we will do, we will create a adp, mention it in adp rg oops sa rg2 sorry 1, because 2 is already there, so we are going to create a new one, and then there is another parameter which is called existing rg, existing resource group, and we will define that is equals to adp sa rg2. So rg2 already exists, rg1 does not exist, should be deployed using this bicep file, because bicep file says that rg will be deployed, existing rg should exist. So but we are using what if, so it will not do anything, it will just validate the template, and we'll try to see what's going to happen if this template will be deployed. We are providing parameter using command line interface. You can use command line just like we are doing, or you can use a parameter file as well. We will be coming to the parameter file. I think we have already discussed about it in some session. No, Okay, we will discuss. Yeah, we have discussed about it, but we will discuss again when we start to have more complex parameters. We will see. I mean, we will actually discuss when to use which option. Okay, so we just tried to run it and it seems like it's not recognized. Okay, let's do this deployment. I think, okay, easy deploy group is the one. Deployment is subscription level. Anyway. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so it's trying to think about it and it's running and it's showing some warnings. We can ignore these warnings for the time being. And right now, don't worry, it's not deploying because we are doing what if, so it will just show what's going to happen. So if you have used Terraform, in Terraform you have a command called plan, which shows you what's going to happen if you deploy this. Similar kind of output you can see, what will be created, what will be ignored, and you can see that it is ignoring RG2 because it will not be created. It will be creating RG1, which has to be created, and then it will create 2 storage accounts with these names in the respective resource group. So in RG1 it will be creating this one, and in RG2 this will be creating this, and as you can see, 3 to create, 1 to ignore. 3 to create means 1 resource group, 2 storage account. 1 to ignore means one of the existing resource group. So this is how it works. Now let's do this, and oops, okay, yeah. So now what we'll do is instead of what if, just a moment, instead of what if, we'll say create. So we want to create these resources, and we will just issue the command, and if what if is fine, it should be running. But many times what happens is that some of the resource properties are checked on runtime. So you might face issues like when you are running what if, now it shows everything green, it does not complain about validation or anything, but when you deploy it, you get a runtime error. So you have to see what's happening here, and the best way to look at it is portal. Where is my portal? Let me close this guy, and there is, yep, there's the portal. Okay, where is the portal? I think here it is. Yep. So if I look at the subscription, and if I go to my subscription deployments, is this deployment, where are you? Yeah. And if I look at this, you will see either, yeah, it has already, so we provide VS local name, so it is right that, but you can provide anything. And ideally it should have a kind of a very unique string, and we will discuss about that again when we are doing deployment through pipeline. Okay, so you can see these are the deployment that has happened, and usually you can see the details, like, you know, what's happened, what were the template given and all those things, and you can even see what was the template evaluated. So when you deploy Azure Bicep, it transformed into or translated to Azure ARM template that we used to deploy previously, and then it is deployed. So you can actually see what was the translation, and of course this is not exactly what we have configured, but some of the values get translated as it is, and when you want to refer this and you want to create infrastructure as code from this, then you may have to do a little bit of refactoring out of it. So for example, you will see a couple of things like versions generator. These are things that we have not defined. This has been defined by the API. Anyway, now you can see the output. So this deployment has two output, and that is what we defined. So as you can see, if we go to our main file, you can see there are two output that we defined, and that is coming out of these module deployment. And these module deployment named were ADP storage account, and then is the ADP storage account 2. And if I go back and go to this, and if I click on VS local, then in this you can see the name of these storage account deployment, and when you go to each of these deployment, you can see what has been deployed, and that's storage account. So one is the storage account, another one is storage account, and there was a resource group as well. So this is how you deploy using Azure Bicep. This is how you create a module, and you can use this module. You can use the module to create multiple resources. Again, right now we are just giving example using a simple Azure storage account, but let me just give me a moment. I am changing my screen here. So yes. So just like we have discussed, this is storage account is a very simplistic module that you have, but in real life example, you would just, yes, yeah. So in real life or production scenarios, what you will have is you will have a couple of control. Oops. Yeah. So you will have a little bit more complex infrastructure over here that will involve storage account, virtual machines, and a lot of stuff that you don't want to repeat again and again. And for such scenarios, modules are really useful. Now right now we have used modules from the local file, but these modules can be published on a private repository so that anyone in the organization can reuse them in their infrastructure as code. So how it works is that initially you will first deploy just like we did in day 3, day 4, like you define your resources in your single bicep file, or maybe a couple of bicep file. You deploy storage account using one bicep file, you deploy virtual machine infrastructure using another bicep file, you deploy other resources using bicep file, and then comes the situation where people say that what, we want to deploy the same resources with the similar configuration but in a different environment. And of course, when it is a different environment, there will be some naming changes, there will be some configuration changes, and there will be some kind of parameters that needs to be kind of considered. So in those cases, you start having the understanding of the reusability, and that's how you come up with the idea of creating this module. And yeah, this is how you do the reusable infrastructure in Azure Bicep using Azure module. We will discuss more about Azure modules, how to host it on a private repository, and then how to use it in our upcoming sessions. Thanks for watching. You can connect me over LinkedIn. You can yeah. So you can connect me over LinkedIn. You can connect me over my website, or you can join our Telegram group where you have we had more than 7,000 members who share their issues related to Azure, related to DevOps, related to any technology in the cloud, and then we help each other to solve the problems of production issues. So yeah, you can join there. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much.